Ah, yes, that glorious 5-year stretch when Hollywood was really trying to make Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey the next Hollywood power couple. And those two brief flashes of promise with this and then Fool's Gold, which basically killed that. But this one was the more successful of the two, I'll give you that. It's based off of a picture book of the same name. The book has no narrative, only a list of comedic dating don'ts. So the characters and plot are basically created for the film. And in the film, you have an advertising executive, Benjamin Barry, played by Matthew McConaughey, who makes a bet that he can make any woman fall in love with him. While women's magazine writer Andy Anderson, played by Kate Hudson, plans to write an article about how she led a man to dump her. Putting them at cross purposes after they choose each other after quarries, Andy employs a number of the dating don'ts from the picture book in her efforts to get Ben to break up with her. But of course, you know how these movies go. I mean, they're going to have that third act breakup, and then they're going to realize that they were really meant for each other, and then you're going to have them get back together again. And I'm not even talking about like the actual movie. Like, if you saw the trailer for this, the full trailer for this, then you pretty much have a good idea of what this movie basically is. And yet, people still bought it up. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that it was opening up around Valentine's Day, and the romantic film to take was for the couples to go see, and it cleaned up at the box office. It did really, really well. I mean, made over $177 million worldwide. So I guess people really liked it, but I don't know. I put this somewhere in the category of some films we've recently talked about, like Sweet Home Alabama and Made in Manhattan. There's films that you see them on TV a lot. They were big hits when they came out, but I really don't get the appeal of it. I really do not. I don't think Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey are really that good together. I mean, they're great actors on their own, but they do not have a whole lot of real chemistry to them. And just because this was a big hit, I didn't see why they felt the need to try to create the next big Hollywood power couple where they have to be in movies together and it will be instant success. Because the next film they did together, Fool's Gold, was a film that was just a mess on so many levels. Like, the script itself couldn't even save that film from becoming just a total disaster in general. And in this film, I didn't really buy their relationship together at all. But again, it just mostly is because of the fact that it's a story we've seen done to death so many times that it just gets really boring really fast, and you know exactly where they're going to go from this point from the point the movie begins to the point the movie ends. And there's no real surprises in here. I mean, yeah, there's a great cast in here to really save the film. That could save the film in general. I mean, you've got Bebe Neuwirth from Cheers, of course, Lilith, Adam Goldberg, Thomas Lennon, Robert Klein, Catherine Hahn, Marvin Hamlish has a cameo in here as well. There are names in here that I guess help to make the supporting cast around here kind of save it a little bit, but even then, it's not worth it to really go through the trials and tribulations of the film, knowing that you're going to get what you pretty much are expected to get from a film like this. But, hey, everybody else seems to like it. This is one of those ones where I'm just like, I don't get the appeal. So that is How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, which is another comedy that didn't do as well as I think people wanted it to do. Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson in the sequel to Shanghai Noon, Shanghai Nights. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. After a Chinese father is murdered and a treasure is stolen, two Chinese siblings and a friend travel to London in search of the sacred treasure and stop the evil that threatens the city and get justice for their father and continue the legacy that he left behind. The two siblings are played by Jackie Chan and Fan Wong, and you also have Owen Wilson back again. Aaron Taylor-Johnson's in this film, too, one of his early film roles. Also, Donnie Yen is in here as well. And this is directed by David Dobkin, who had just done Clay Pigeons a couple years prior, and went on to eventually become a pretty prolific director, starting with Wedding Crashers and then continuing on for much of the decade after that. And the film was a hit. It did actually make more money than the original film did, but something about this movie, I don't know. Maybe Disney was hoping for more from it, but they never made a third film. They talked about doing a third film for the longest time. In fact, in 2015. MGM, who had owned the rights to it, said they were making a third film, and it actually looked like they were going full speed ahead on it. And then it just kind of died down. There was an update in 2016 that Jared Hess was going to direct it, and then there hasn't been anything since since it's 2024 now. That's almost 10 years now, 8 years to be exact, when the last time that they talked about this movie in general. And I don't know why they didn't do it, because like I said, it was a hit when it came out. Financially, critically, not so much, but I mean, it made money, but then again, maybe that's not what they needed to do. Maybe the money wasn't the factor in this film. Maybe they just didn't want to make it because there's literally nothing of value to these films whatsoever. I mean, the Rush Hour films, the sequels, as bad as you want to say that they are, there's at least something going on. The chemistry between Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker is there. There is no chemistry between Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson whatsoever. And it wasn't even that in the first movie either. The first movie is one of those films that just like, it came out, did well, and I never got the appeal of it. I tried watching both of these movies again not too long ago. I still don't get the appeal for them. I don't think they're really that funny. I don't think they're really that clever. I don't think it's really that interesting. It's just kind of a dull film. These two films are just really dull films that are kind of boring. They don't have anything of noteworthiness to them. And I don't know. I just feel like they weren't the good films that I think everyone made them out to be. They're just kind of films that, now the more I think about it, there probably is a good reason why they haven't made another one of these, because there's really nothing there to make this worth a watch. I mean, it does not hold up well over time, and it's mostly a boring film, as is the first film is. Nothing of value comes from these movies whatsoever, and yeah, I really don't have anything much more to say about it. I just never really got into these movies, and even after all these years later and giving them another shot, I still don't see the appeal of it, quite honestly. So can we have at least one comedy this weekend, save the entire weekend in general? Let's see if LL Cool J and Gabrielle Union can do that with the last one we have here. Deliver Us from Eva.
Marriage can be heaven. Sister-in-law can be hell. But don't mind us, we're just having sex.
So just come back in, what, 2 minutes?
And some play, he might be the man to rid us of evil.
Try to get that woman I'll go down and play a Hall of Fame.
Think they can work miracles.
What's the accident rate on these things?
Well, I dropped it. From the writer-director of The Brothers, LL Cool J, Gabrielle Union, Deliver Us from Eva. Think I might love her. Forgot the rules. Don't feel. I'm like a pimp with a health plan. Rated R. Starts February 7th.
So you have Gabrielle Union playing Eva Dandridge, who's a very uptight young woman who constantly meddles in the affairs of her sisters and their husbands. Her in-laws, who are tired of Eva interfering in their lives, decide to set her up with someone so she can leave him alone. They end up paying Ray, the local playboy played by LL Cool J, $5,000 to date her. The plan goes by smoothly, but trouble comes when Ray actually falls in love with Eva. And like we saw before, hilarity ensues. So yeah, it's kind of similar to How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, except of the two films, this one's probably a little bit better. Not by a lot, though. I mean, it's fine. I guess it's not really that terrible in general, but I do find it kind of intriguing that it is a modern update of The Taming of the Shrew by William Shakespeare. And you can definitely see it if you know that story and watch this movie in general. You can see a lot of the parallels in here. And I think that, overall, I thought LL Cool J and Gabrielle Union were a good couple together. I think they actually do have a lot of good chemistry together. I also find it kind of interesting that LL Cool J actually used his real name for the credits here, James Todd Smith, which, that's kind of unusual, because everyone knows him as LL Cool J, but I find that kind of interesting that they actually casted him with that name here, even though it doesn't show up in that trailer there, But I mean, the cast overall is fine, I guess. And just the film itself is kind of your predictable romantic comedy. That's really the biggest flaw that is the story. I mean, yeah, your leads can easily help the film get past the problems of a generic script, but in this particular movie, it just doesn't quite really live up to that. It's just a film that feels like there's some good ideas there. There's a possibility for something there. There's something like there may be something there that wasn't there before, to quote Beauty and the Beast, but it just doesn't really show up what it really needs to. And there's not a really good cast involved here. Talking about the guy who did The Brothers, Gary Hardwick. But other than that, though, and here's a little bit of interesting information. Mel Gibson actually has a cameo in here as himself. That feels very interesting. It's just kind of random, too. Like, he just shows up there. It's just like, what's Mel Gibson doing here? We don't know. It's just a little cameo, But yeah, other than that, though, Not much more I can say about it, honestly. Like I said, if I had to choose between this and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, I'd probably pick this one, but it's by a slim margin, too. Neither film is really all that great, but at least this one, I like that it was trying to do something a little bit different. I just wish the story didn't go down the predictable rom-com route. But, yeah, not much more to say about that one. Deliver Us from Eden.
I prowl the rooftops and alleyways at night, searching for justice. Blind justice. A guardian devil. I was 12 years old. I had lost my sight, but I got something back in return. My remaining 4 senses functioned with superhuman sharpness. I could hear a whisper a block away, but the most amazing of all was a kind of radar sense. Soon the world will know the truth. There is no proof that Daredevil even exists. That one man can make a difference.
What do you want?
Justice.
Matt Murdock.
Nice to meet you.
I didn't get your name.
I didn't give it.
Sure you don't want to tell me your name?
My name's Orion. I have to go. My bodyguard is here.
Your bodyguard?
In the city ruled by fear.
Kingpin just doesn't kill you. He kills your whole family.
One man will face his greatest challenge in Bullseye. Death is mine. Is that really necessary?
Necessary?
No, it's fun. And a new hero will be born.
Time to give the devil his due.
How do you kill a man without fear?
We're putting the fear in him.
New York is not a safe place tonight.
I have to go. I got work to do. How am I going to find you?
I'll find you.
Daredevil. Is there anything else?
Yeah. I want a costume.
God, I miss those early 2000s superhero movie trailers. I mean, that's the perfect definition of a superhero movie trailer back in the day. I mean, you got, the quick shots of all the characters. You got all the notable names that you see in there. I mean, you got those little scenes, like the scene where Joe Pantoliano's throwing the lighter on the ground and it spells out DD. I mean, stuff like that is just so cheesy and so corny, but in kind of a way. And the music, the soundtrack too. I mean, Evanescence singing "Wake Me Up Inside." Like, it's cheesy, it's corny, but I kind of miss that with superhero movies nowadays. But even though superhero movies are clearly a lot better than this film is, I still miss those days when we had trailers like that. But Daredevil, directed by hack director Mark Steven Johnson, who later destroyed Ghost Rider, and starred Ben Affleck, pre-director era and pre-Geely career breakdown, which we'll get to that one later on in the year, in the title role. Fate deals young orphan Matt Murdock, played by Ben Affleck, a strange hand when he is doused with hazardous waste. The accident leaves Matt blind, but also gives him a heightened radar sense that allows him to see far better than any man. Years later, Murdock has grown into the man and has become a respected criminal attorney. But after he's done his day job, Matt takes on a secret identity known as the Man Without Fear, Daredevil, the masked avenger that patrols the neighborhood of Hell's Kitchen and New York City to combat the injustice that he could not tackle in the courtroom. He faces his greatest battle, Wilson Fisk, a.k.a. the Kingpin, played by Michael Clark Duncan, and his hired Bullseye, played by Colin Farrell, and teams up with Elektra, played by Jennifer Garner, to take out the bad guys. The movie takes a lot of elements from Frank Miller's Daredevil run, The Man Without Fear, and it does have a lot of problems to it. Very rarely does this movie have anything that makes it worth watching when you really look at it. I was honestly really bored watching this movie because nothing really goes on in this film. I mean, Ben Affleck is so bland in this movie, and when he's Daredevil, he's not any better. Like, his Matt Murdock's pretty bland. His Daredevil is somehow even worse. Like, the costume even really doesn't sell me. I mean, I get it. It's the same costume from the comics, but when they bring it to life, it just looks terrible. And you see why the original X-Men movies didn't bring, like, Wolverine's costume into the movies, because it really would have looked really stupid back then. Nowadays, with Deadpool and Wolverine on the horizon, they could actually make it look cool in that sense. But back then, no, they really wouldn't do. It really did not work back then, and it probably wouldn't have worked nowadays if you tried to do that. But I mean, the new Daredevil is much better. But we'll delve more into that in just a second. But Jennifer Garner's Elektra looks badass, but as a character, she's pretty bland. She's really poorly developed, and you can't really get invested into that character so much. And it really baffles me why Tom Rothman looked at this movie's success and said, you know what we need to do next? Not a Daredevil sequel. Let's give Jennifer Garner a spin-off with her film. I mean, maybe I get why, because, you know, she was on Alias, and she was one of the hottest TV stars on the planet at that point, both in a sense of superstardom and also in terms of sexuality, because, man, this was around the time that Alias aired after the Super Bowl. If you ever watch that episode, the way that begins, it's just like, man, that's just like, that was her peak hotness to me, in my opinion. But I mean, but they said give her a spin-off movie, and unfortunately, the film did not. That film was even worse than this. But we'll have to wait for a while to get to that one. But trust me, I will have a lot to say about it, because that movie holds some not so great memories for me. But continuing on, Colin Farrell's Bullseye is supposed to be this badass assassin, but he's very cartoonish in this. I mean, you never take him seriously as a bad guy. I don't care if he never misses a shot. I would have never found this guy threatening whatsoever. I would have been just laughing at him. It's just like, hey, at least I'm going to die laughing at your sorry ass. Surprisingly, the only person I thought actually worked in this film was Michael Clark Duncan as the Kingpin. Okay, yeah, Kingpin is supposed to be white, but Michael Clark Duncan really captured more of that character he was supposed to play more than any other character in this film. Yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio was great on the Marvel show that came out a couple years later, but Clark Duncan really does give it his all, and I thought he was the only character in this movie that I actually did like, and he's the bad guy. And it just proves you can change a character's race around, a gender or two, if you have to, and get the right act. If you get the right actor to do it, chances are you're going to put out a really good product too, and at least in a performance spectrum, I mean. But the padding scenes in between the action sequences and the story feel really lazy and uninspired. There's nothing in these scenes that keep you invested whatsoever, and I'm just waiting for the next action scene to begin. And even when that happens, it's really boring and very predictable. Almost every single one of these things we've seen done to death so many times in other movies and TV shows. Even the villain's motivation isn't really all that thought out. I mean, I don't even know what real plan he even had. The King, what did he really have to work with here? It's just like, when they finally reveal him, it's just like, you got to be kidding me. That's the most blandest, most mediocre plan I've ever seen. I mean, it feels like, you feel like Steve on American Dad when Roger's about to beat up Stan, and Stan just hits him with a foot with a chair, and you're just looking at it, and Steve was just like, that was your plan? Like, I really felt like that. It's just like, that was really it? It's just like, I'm not going to reveal what it is, but once they reveal it, it feels really repetitive, and it's been done to death numerous times. And yes, I know that I'm mostly talking about the theatrical version, and I know there's a director's cut version, but yeah, it may be a slight improvement over the theatrical version, but is that really all you want, is a slight improvement? How about an actual good movie revolving around this character? This was the first real, I don't want to say straight up bomb, but like, it was the first real underperformer for Marvel once they finally got back on track with making movies and had a major studio behind it with X-Men and Spider-Man. This was the first one that really was a misfire in the long sense. I mean, they had a strong track record going up to that point with X-Men and Spider-Man, and then you have this. There was a little bit of a reprieve with X-Men 2, but then came cratering down again with Hulk after that, but we've still got a lot of Marvel to get to in 2003, but there is potential for a great Daredevil movie, but they just didn't deliver on any of the potential that they had. They went to a hack director who never read Deadpool in his life. Just make a bland origin story, make another movie that's like Batman, like don't even try to do anything creative or new with it. You know, Spider-Man just came out. I mean, you couldn't have just looked at Spider-Man and said, hey, why don't we do a movie like that and actually get somebody to actually make it good? No, we're not going to do that, but we're just going to get a bland origin story, and that's what Daredevil is. A lot of potential, but it just leaves you very disappointed by the end. A bad film, but trust me, it's going to get worse when we look at some of the other Marvel films coming up, so stay tuned for that one. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and move on to the last film we have here, and that is The Jungle Book 2 from Disney.
Only in theaters this February. A big bear. A wild child. A cool cat. And a little jungle rhythm. It's Disney's The Jungle Book 2.
Hit it, Papa Bear. Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your stress.
On February 14th.
Morning sun peeks over the mountains.
Come inside. You must never go into the jungle.
Hey, over here. The continuing story
Show me you can still fight like a bear.
of one of Disney's most beloved animated classics arrives.
You don't need her, kid. You're with old Baloo now. Roar.
With new songs,
When we start to move, hey, honey, it ain't no joke.
new friends, and some of the coolest cats
Just like downtown.
to ever roam the wild.
They're lost in the jungle. You seem surprised to see me.
Hey, pussycat. He's harmless.
This February, get back to the bare necessities. John Goodman,
Man, this place is happening.
Haley Joel Osment
Yeah, man.
in Disney's The Jungle Book 2.
In case you haven't noticed, kid, I'm no wild animal, except at parties.
I'll give it this. They did a pretty good job with the casting. I mean, who else are you going to get to play Baloo except for John Goodman? And, you know, at least in this one, Haley Joel Osment isn't listed as introducing Haley Joel Osment like they did with Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, but I digress. From Disney's wildly popular The Jungle Book comes a thrilling animated feature film. The jungle's jumping again as Mowgli, Baloo, Bagheera, the rest of your favorite characters return in the fun-filled musical adventure The Jungle Book 2. Mowgli has been living in the village among the humans. His new life includes his little stepbrother Rajan and his best friend Shanti, but the man cub still has the jungle rhythm in his heart, and he misses his old friend Baloo. When Mowgli wanders back into the wild for some swinging fun, he soon finds Baloo isn't the only one waiting for him. The man-eating tiger Shere Khan is lurking in the shadows and plans his revenge. If he is to defeat his nemesis, Mowgli will need the help of his old friends and his new family. Okay, that's pretty much all the description I've given you here, because you can tell this was clearly written by somebody in Disney's PR department, but, like I said, the sad part about this movie is that there's clearly effort being put in there to make a film that is at least trying in terms of getting decent voice actors to replace the voice cast. I thought Haley Joel Osment and John Goodman did a pretty good job replacing Mowgli and Baloo, and they do get a lot of good job replacing the older actors along with the other actors in here to really make it feel like it's the same type of film. It's the same characters from the same movie, but they have different voices in there that clearly are not the same as the ones from the original 60s Jungle Book. But the downside is that everything else is mostly forgettable. It's not really a bad movie. It's a pointless sequel. Nothing ever changes from where things were in the opening to where they are in the ending. Nothing of value ever gets put out here. It's clearly a pointless film. It's clearly the definition of a straightforward cash grab. This is, like I said before, this had to be intended for a direct-to-video Disney sequel, but they saw what happened with Return to Neverland, saw that it did well because, let's be honest, there was no other family films around there for that to compete with, which, again, like this year, not a whole lot of family films to compete with it except for Kangaroo Jack. So, yeah, if I was Disney, I'd probably make that same decision too. I mean, take as much money away from that Kangaroo as you can, but they blew this up for the big screen. There was no reason to do so, and this is the end result we get. It's a pretty generic movie with a lot of bad animation, a lackluster storyline that's nothing but a retread of the first film, lame comedy, the new characters are unmemorable. It's just a dull film that has no reason to be on the big screen. I mean, you'd be better off just skipping this and just go back and watch the original movie again, or just watch the live-action remake that just came out with Jon Favreau directing it. I mean, there are so many better options out there than to watch The Jungle Book 2. You get a better movie experience with either the first film or the remake. I mean, quite frankly, that's pretty much all he can say about this movie, is that it's a pointless sequel, did not need to go to the big screen, did not even need to exist, but it's there. I've had my thoughts on it. Jungle Book 2.
21st, you're officially starting a fraternity.
He looks like he's 100 years old.
Take the pledge.
Ring the bell, you pancake.
Music party. Tell anyone about this, I'll kill you. I'm kidding. Old School. Rated R. February 21st, everywhere.
I promised my wife I wouldn't drink tonight. We're going drinking!
Why do men act like boys?
Careful with that.
Yes. Because they can. Old School. Rated R. Starts tomorrow everywhere.
one of the first official films from the frat pack era, if you will, because you got Vince Vaughn and Will Ferrell, who made a ton of movies in that category. You have those two, along with Luke Wilson, as depressed men in their 30s who seek to relive their college days by starting a fraternity and the trials and tribulations they encounter in doing so. This is, of course, Todd Phillips' follow-up to Road Trip, which put his name on the map. This is also written by the same guy who would eventually, co-written by the same man, Scott Armstrong, who Phillips would eventually re-team with for the Hangover movies. And what can you say about this movie that hasn't already been said, man? This is a freaking funny movie, man. This is what a raunchy comedy is supposed to be. It's a raunchy college comedy with three guys clearly in their 30s, and it works very well. A cast that includes not only really good talents in the three main leading roles, but if you look at the cast of this movie, it's got a lot of talent involved in it. I mean, we're talking about, pre-Entourage is in here. Jeremy Piven. You've got you've got Meredith Grey from Grey's Anatomy. I couldn't remember what her first name was. I knew she was the title character in Grey's Anatomy. I just couldn't remember the first name. But no, Ellen Pompeo was in this movie. You got Juliette Lewis. You got Leah Remini from The King of Queens in here. Perry Reeves, of course, Ari's wife from Entourage as well. Craig Kilborn, who was still on the Late Late Show at the time. Simon Helberg, pre-Big Bang Theory. Sean William Scott. Jack Bauer's daughter, Elijah Cuthbert from 24. Rick Gonzalez, Artie Lang, Rob Corddry, Harv Presnell, Snoop Dogg, James Carville, Warren G, Andy Dick, Terry O'Quinn is an uncredited cameo in this as well. A lot of talent across the board in this movie, and the movie is just so hilarious and well done. You could tell that this was made by the same person who was there when he was making Animal House. He was one of the producers on Animal House, Ivan Reitman was, and you knew that he had the chops to make this work, and sure enough, here it is, like a film that is just so freaking funny, man. And just shows off what makes these actors all so special. The jokes in here are very funny, and of course, what most notable about this movie, this was the first film to feature Will Ferrell in it post-Saturday Night Live, and of course, this was the beginning of his career as a leading film actor, and kind of like with John Belushi in Animal House, it's the film that put him on the map, essentially. But unlike John Belushi, who usually took his time with his films, Will Ferrell had a couple of big hits in this particular movie. We'll get to the other big one when we get towards the end of the year, but just a freaking phenomenal movie, man. I can't recommend this one enough. It's funny, it's so twisted and hilarious. It's the perfect definition of a great raunchy college comedy, and something that sadly is becoming a dying art form, unfortunately, but we're seeing it slowly come back, the raunchy comedy. We've had it with No Hard Feelings, which was really good from last year, but I'm hoping that's the beginning of the trend moving forward, that we're starting to get some really good raunchy comedies again, because we've been on kind of a roll the last couple of years, but this was kind of the film that was one of the films that kind of cemented the return of the raunchy comedy back then, and of course would lead to a number of different movies with the frat pack in general, and we're going to get to a couple of them throughout the course of this year too, so stick around for that if you will, but yeah. Old School's pretty freaking awesome. What more do I gotta say? Let's move on to the next movie, and here's an awkward film with Kevin Spacey in it. It's The Life of David Gale.
I know that I'm not doing too well. I would do anything to pass.
Anything, huh?
Anything.
I never found this stupid happen, nice one.
Don't look away.
You shouldn't be doing this.
Don't miss a word.
Mr. Gale, Austin Police.
Because the truth
Someone's framing you.
Oh, it's more than that.
will blow your mind.
Oh my God.
The Life of David Gale. Rated R at theaters Friday.
Aged like fine wine. This is, of course, a film with Kevin Spacey in the title role. It's co-produced by Nicolas Cage and written by Charles Randolph, who would actually later go on to win an Oscar for writing the script for The Big Short with Adam McKay, and directed and co-produced by Alan Parker. And you have the story of Spacey as the college professor and longtime activist against capital punishment, who was sentenced to death for killing a fellow capital punishment opponent. You also have Kate Winslet, Laura Linney, Gabriel Mann, and also Rona Mitre in here. And a film like this should be very thought-provoking and very intriguing, having a lot of interesting conversations about the death penalty and, capital punishment and all that. But no, this is the type of film that opens up in February where you look at it and then you realize, yeah, this is why this is released in February, because this is something that they clearly decided to dump there. Because the whole idea of the film is supposed to be an argument. It should be an argument about you know, the death penalty, like I said, and capital punishment, and is it going too far, and how is it all that type of stuff, and then it's just like, no, it just goes the traditional, predictable thriller route. Like it's a movie that's trying to pound the message into your head so much, and a good film should not do that, especially a film by Alan Parker. This is a guy that has done a ton of great movies over the course of his career. You know, Bugsy Malone, Midnight Express, Fame, you know, Pink Floyd's The Wall, Angel Heart, Mississippi Burning, The Commitments, Evita, and this was the last film he directed before he passed away, and he essentially retired after this movie came out. And the whole idea of the movie really is, it's not really giving you the right message of how to handle the situation here. Like, it's a film that's supposed to be, like it really makes you question whether or not you should be for the death penalty, when the right answer to that should be, yes, you should be in support of the death penalty. But, like, a good movie, take for example what we just had recently, Civil War. What made that movie great? Because it didn't pick sides. It didn't pick sides on which side it should be on. It made you, the audience, think about which side you should be on. And it made you think. This is a film that does not make you think whatsoever. It just confuses you more than it makes you think. And it's amazing how this film actually holds a place in history now, because you may not have heard of this story, but I just found this out when I was doing the research on this. But in the Philippines, there was a senator and a 2022 presidential candidate, Ping Lacson, who actually credited the film in changing his mind on capital punishment. He had previously served as the nation's chief of police, was an advocate of capital offense for heinous crimes. However, he said, after seeing the movie on Netflix, he said, and quote, "My eyes were open that it is more important to save the life of someone innocent and convict them to execute someone who really is convicted and proven to have committed a crime." Afterwards, he withdrew his authorship of a bill proposing the death penalty for heinous crimes. This film has a place in history, and quite frankly, I don't know why, because of all the things that you could have gotten this information from, why did it have to be this film? I mean, it's like when Contagion suddenly got this reappraisal because of COVID, and the movie was terrible back then. It's still terrible now. I'm sorry, that movie, I love Steven Soderbergh, but that's one of his worst films he's ever made as a director, bar none. And this is right up there with Contagion as one of those movies where it's just like, you really got inspiration from watching this? Yeah, it's just not a good movie. It doesn't ask you any questions. It just wants you to watch something that clearly would have been seen as the Lifetime movie of the week if it didn't have these big actors and this huge director involved with it and a major studio behind it. But other than that, there's no reason why this should have been put in theaters per se. Like, I don't know. It just didn't work for me personally. So that's the life of David Gale. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Gods and Generals. Still not as good as Ted Turner's last production he had.
I'd like to announce I'm giving a gift the whole world can appreciate. I've colorized the moon.
Actually, to be fair, this actually does play a significant part of the history of Ted Turner and how he started TBS, TNT, and Cartoon Network. And this was a major game-changing for him because the film did not perform as well as they thought it was going to, and it really hurt him in the long run. The story of this movie is that you follow the story of Stonewall Jackson from the beginning of the American Civil War to his death at the Battle of Chancellorsville. It stars Stephen Lang as Stonewall Jackson, Jeff Daniels as Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Chamberlain, and Robert Duvall as General Robert E. Lee. And the film ran for originally 5 hours in length. They actually cut it down to an hour and a half. That means it's still 3.5 hours long. And they decided, put this on the big screen, and Ted Turner put his money where his mouth was, because he actually literally put $60 million into the production of the film, not to mention an additional $30 million to distribute it. So it's actually one of the most expensive independent films ever produced. This is technically not on Warner Brothers overall, even though they released the film. The movie was all, most of the money came from Ted Turner's pocket, and that was huge because the film unfortunately failed to make money at the box office. It was not a big hit. Not to say that it wasn't received well by critics. Most people actually did appreciate the film, but it basically caused Ted Turner, who was at the time losing much of his wealth because of the AOL Time Warner merger, and he actually invested his investment in the film to be worth 15% of his assets in general. So he had to cancel the plans to actually adapt the third story, because they did Gettysburg before this, which was the last full measure, which never made it to the big screen, despite the fact that there was a lot of ambition to turn the profits in this into that next film. I think the biggest problem with this movie in general is the fact that it is a theatrical release. I mean, it's not a bad movie. It's just a film that, it just feels like a film that probably would have been better as a miniseries, like a big, epic, sweeping miniseries, like something on the lines of a Roots, kind of, it's like a big television event, when you could still get away with doing this as a big television network event for a major network. Like, if this had aired as a TNT miniseries and you put a lot of promotion into it, you probably would have had something really, really big in terms of ratings-wise, but the fact that they put this up on the big screen, I think, really hurt it in the long run. They also put a lot of promotion to it. There was actually a video game that came out and was actually released on PlayStation 2, if I'm not mistaken. PlayStation 2 and Xbox, I think? Okay, maybe I was wrong about it being a PlayStation 2 release. It's released only as a PC Windows exclusive, but the fact they made a game off of this, they were really hoping that this was going to be something big, and in terms of success-wise, and it just really wasn't there. It's gotten really rotten reviews on there, but I didn't think the movie was all that bad. I thought there was a noble effort being put into it, and yeah, it's not as good as something like Gettysburg was, because I think Gettysburg really is the best of the two movies, but this film in particular, I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. You can definitely see the effort is there to make something as a big, grand, sweeping epic, but not a lot of people really want to see this on the big screen, especially when you have to sit there for 3.5 hours. I mean, you have to be able to make something unique and something interesting to keep the audience's attention going on this for a long period of time. And it's not like we can't do that, because, last year we had 2 movies that were long films, but they were very intriguing films, engaging films. Oppenheimer, Kills of the Flower Moon. Those were two of the best movies from last year. So it's not impossible to do that. With this, it just feels like it was just the wrong approach, essentially, to take this to the big screen and hope for success here. But perhaps, maybe, because we've got Horizon and American Saga coming up, the Kevin Costner film that's being split up into 2 parts. And if that works out, that's probably what they should have done with this. Split it up into 2 films and, build some interesting characters, build some buzz on the first film, and then release the second movie. But again, we still have to see if Horizon's going to make any money. And if it doesn't, it could probably turn into another Gods and Generals type of thing, except they split that film up split up into 2 movies. But this, yeah, I don't know. I didn't hate it as much as everybody else did. I thought it was okay. I don't think it was as great as that. I don't think it was as bad, I should say, as everyone makes it out to be, because it's got like an 8% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, this movie has a lot of things to it that are very positive, and trust me, it's better than some of the movies that would have been around that same general area in terms of that ratings percentage. But I thought it was all right. I don't think it's as bad as everyone makes it out to be. It's no Gettysburg, though. So, yeah, that's Gods in General. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Kurt Russell in Ron Shelton's Dark Blue.
Raised up to be a gunfighter by a family of gunfighters.
There are cops who live by their own rules.
You gotta be heartless in my line of work.
There's Eldon Perry.
If you knock one down, make sure he stays down. I got a gun! Yeah, you do!
On February 21st, only one man
Do you know what you're doing?
can bring him down.
Declaring war.
Kurt Russell.
How ugly do you think it's gonna get?
Big ratings.
Ugly.
Don't read the Hostels February 21st everywhere.
Speaking of films that probably don't get the proper respect they deserve, Dark Blue's pretty cool. You have it set in the Los Angeles Police Department in April of 1992, and it's a dramatic thriller that takes place just the days before the acquittal of 4 white officers in the beating of black motorist Rodney King and the subsequent LA riots. In this racially charged climate, the LAPD's elite Special Investigation Squad is assigned a high-profile quadruple homicide as they work with the case. You have a veteran detective named Eldon Perry, played by Kurt Russell, known for his tough street tactics and fiery temper, and tutoring a rookie, Bobby Keogh, in the grim realities of police intimidation and corruption. Meanwhile, Assistant Chief Holland, played by Ving Rhames, the only man in the department willing to stand up to the Sis, threatens to end Perry's brand of single-handed justice on the Los Angeles streets. While navigating through the tumultuous neighborhoods of South Central LA, Perry and Kino must track down cold-blooded killers and face their own demons, which prove to be more ruthless than the criminals they pursue. Kino is played by Scott Speedman, who would later go on to star in Underworld within the next year. Brendan Gleeson's also in here. Ron Shelton's wife, Olivia Davidovich, Candy Alexander, Jonathan Banks. A pretty good cast overall here. And kind of a film that maybe is a little bit ahead of its time. You've got a great, not just a great cast in general with the people involved in here, but Ron Shelton, who's made a lot of great movies, Bull Durham, criminally underrated films like Blaze, David Ayer, who would later go on to write stuff like Street Kings, Harsh Times, and End of Watch, and James Ellroy, who wrote the story of this. He wrote the story for this, and he wrote L.A. Confidential. So the pieces are definitely there, and I'm not going to say the movie is a great film overall, but I think it's a film that deserves a lot more respect than it gets, because the performances in here are really what carries the load of the film. Kurt Russell and Ving Rhames, I think, are very good in this film. Scott Speedman shows a lot of what he can do. The film is very dark and gritty, and that's what I really appreciate about that. Like, it doesn't pull any punches. It knows exactly how far it needs to go to get its point across. And some might say it's a little bit comparative to something like Training Day or Narc, which I think are much better films, but I think the film overall is still very complex and interesting enough that you still get attached to the ideas of it, and you get invested in how the story is going to end. And I think it's a film that really does work better than I think a lot of people would let on. And I think it's a film that should get more attention than it deserves. It's a film that I think is criminally a little bit underrated. So, yeah, definitely check out Dark Blue. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our last movie here, Juliette Binoche and Jean Reno in the French romantic comedy Jet Lag.
Départ indéterminé sur tous les vols. Ça veut dire quoi, départ indéterminé? Non, on paye comme... Monsieur, je peux vous l'emprunter 2 minutes?
On est bon pour ça.
Oh, je m'excuse, pardon.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
C'est qui, lui?
Je suis personne.
Personne.
On t'attend. Alors allez-y. Posez-moi toutes les questions qui vous brûlent les lèvres. Allez-y.
I honestly would have never brought this movie up if I had not seen the advertisements when the movie, newspapers nowadays probably don't have this as much, but back in the day, newspapers used to have movie ads, and there was one for this film in particular that something compelled me about it. Something made me want to see this movie, and I never got around to seeing it until very later on. But in the film, you have, at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, a French beautician played by Juliette Binoche is on her way to a new job in Mexico and accidentally meets a French chef played by Jean Reno, who has been delayed on his way to Germany from his residence in the United States. Labor strikes, bad weather, and pure luck causes the two of them to share a room overnight at the airport Hilton Hotel. Their initial mutual indifference and downright hostility evolves into romance and a re-examination of their lives, and I think you can figure out where it goes from there. And it's about as good as a fun romantic comedy can be. Like, it's not a movie that's very manipulative. You do buy into the chemistry and the relationship between Binoche and Reno. You believe that they can actually be a couple in real life, and it's very interesting to see Jean Reno in a role that's a little bit out of the norm for him. We're not used to seeing him in a very romantic leading role here, but he plays it off very well, and I think the chemistry between Binoche and Reno really makes it stand out the most in this particular film. The joke can be funny sometimes. The visuals can look really impressive. I thought it was a very good film. I thought it was a very underrated little gem. I'm glad I got to see it when I did, because it did kind of live up to the initial thoughts I had about it. This thing could look promising, and it definitely lives up to that promise in general. I thought it was a very fun film. Nothing too grand, nothing too amazing, but it's one you should probably definitely check out. A little bit of an underrated gem here, Jet Lag.
Alright, y'all know what to do. Let's get it on. Want to see a black diamond?
I want my stones, Mr. Big.
You're not going to be able to do that.
The stones are not what you think they are.
There's no gun policy, no over the front. Break out the heat.
Rated R. Starts Friday, February 28th.
And in that trailer right there, you pretty much saw the two most notable things about that movie. One, the song X Gonna Give It To You, and Gabrielle Union doing a striptease, a pretty hot striptease, but even then, she doesn't get naked, so just like the rest of this movie, it's entirely pointless, and there's no reason to watch it. But that's what you get when you get a movie by Andrei Bartkowiak, and great cinematographer, not a great director. And this film is definitely another one of those movies that's really, really not all that good. When his daughter is kidnapped and held in exchange for priceless diamonds, the leader of a crew of highly skilled urban thieves led by DMX forges an unlikely alliance with a Taiwanese internet intelligence official played by Jet Li to rescue her. The race against the clock to find the precious stones unravels a plot to distribute a deadly new weapon of war. And you really do not give a crap about any of these people in this movie. It's a generic, lackluster thriller that's trying to be something like on the level of something like a Heat or something like that. But even then, Heat had more to it than this movie does, by a long comparison. And yeah, Tom Arnold plays a serious role in here. I think that's all you really need to know about this movie, to know that, yeah, this is probably not the movie for you. It's got a great cast overall. Jet Li, DMX, Gabrielle Union, Mark Dacascos, Kelly Hu, Anthony Anderson, Chi McBride is also in here. But as soon as you see Tom Arnold in there, you know it's box office poison from the get-go, because, yeah, that's the death ringer right there. And yeah, I've got nothing else to say about this movie, because it's a pretty lackluster film, and you know where it's going to end up. You know what's going to happen. You know what the plot twists are going to be. You know who's working for what side. And there's nothing of value to it whatsoever. And the best things about it, you could easily find online if you want to really listen to or watch those parts. But even then, it's not really worth it in the long run to even give the movie that type of credit overall. So why even watching the film? Like, what's the point? I mean, does DMX have a loyal fan base that's really going to want to watch this? Does Jet Li have a loyal fan base that wants to watch him in this, rather than actually putting something in where they can actually use their talents to it? There's a whole lot better films with these two that they've been in, and this is just not one of those films. So, yeah, I've got nothing else to say about this one. It's released in late February for a reason. It's a forgettable film. It's not worth it in the long run, but people in America made it a hit. It made double its budget, so success on their part. Good old Warner Brothers. But I don't even know what the point of that whole what that last sentence was, but anyway, let's go ahead and move on to hopefully a better movie here. Let's talk about Pool Hall Junkies.
Straight to the last grip. Pool Hall Junkies is the best pool shark film since Paul Newman's The Hustler.
How's this getting started?
And easily outshoots, outcharms,
What's it worth to you?
and outclasses The Color of Money.
I'm sure it all.
Queue up for Pool Hall Junkies. There's no need to be scared. There's time to get off. Pool Hall Junkies, rated R. Starts February 28th in select cities.
You know, just because The Hustler is the only notable pool movie out there doesn't mean you get the honor of saying that it's the best pool movie since The Hustler. And The Color of Money is a much better film compared to this. I mean, I know that came from Harry Knowles, who made it Cool News, but it just goes to show you that guy was, as much as he was loved by most people, he did not put a lot of good reviews out there. I mean, remember, this is the same guy that gave Godzilla a positive review because the studio seduced him into giving him a review by taking him out on this big promotional push, and that's what happened with that film. But I digress. Pool Hall Junkies, it's kind of a story that's very similar to The Hustler when you really look at it. You have a pool hustler who is opposed by his former mentor with a new prodigy in a climactic big-stakes 9-ball matchup with Chaz Palminteri, Rod Steiger in his last film role, Michael Rosenbaum, Rick Schroeder, Allison Eastwood, and Christopher Walken. It's the second movie this year that Christopher Walken has been in, and it's been a terrible, terrible movie. I mean, not quite as bad as Kangaroo Jack, which you don't really need to do a whole lot much to be on that level, but this is not that fun of a film. This is directed by Mars Callahan, who co-stars in the film, co-writes the film, and the last thing he was actually in was That Thing You Do. That was one of his more notable films that he was involved in. But this is just, it's not worth it, man. It's a film that is literally trying to be The Hustler for the new generation, and there's a reason why there's not that many pool movies out there besides The Hustler, which is a classic film on its own merits. Like, there's no reason to make a film like this unless you're going to do something different. Like, at least with The Color of Money, when Martin Scorsese did that film, he put at least his style to it, and at least it was trying to do more in that film than they didn't try to do here. This is nothing but trying to just modernize The Hustler for a new generation, and it just doesn't work. It's a film that just really is lackluster in so many levels. It's not that engaging, it's not that exciting, it's just not worth it in the long run. That's pretty much all I got to say about that one. But let's go ahead and move on to our last movie, which is probably the most interesting movie of the entire week. It's a little film called A Fish Tale, but some of you may know it as Help, I'm a Fish.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to see the world under the sea? Well, flying fish friends are about to find out.
Jump! Come on over, give me a hand. Let us fishing. The tide.
They stumble into a secret passage
Check this place out.
that leads to a mad professor.
Let me show you how to make fish ocean.
And drink a potion that sends them into the ocean.
Stop! Wait! If you don't get the antidote within 48 hours, you'll be a fish forever! Stella!
Stella, fly.
What happened?
I turned into a jellyfish.
So this is a very, very weird film. The story of this is that you have a teenager who has his fishing plans abruptly canceled, so he finds himself stuck with his little sister and his precocious cousin at Anna's house. As one thing leads to another, the situation will take an unexpected turn when the kids chance upon the boathouse of the eccentric scientist, Professor McCrill, and Stella accidentally drinks a yellowish potion. Now as the children end up stranded in the deep blue sea, they only have 48 hours to find the antidote. Will the young adventurers remain fish forever? See, this plot synopsis doesn't even tell you that beforehand, that this potion turns you into a fish. Like, whoever wrote this storyline on IMDb, like, I go to IMDb for most of my synopsises so I can read that off, so I can at least get a sense of what the movie is about. But sometimes these plot synopsises really need to be proofread. Like, they need to be better written than what this is. It's just like, it doesn't even tell you what actually happens to the kids. But yeah, they drank this potion and they turn into fish. And there's also an antidote where if you drink that potion, it turns a fish into a human. And this was originally released in Denmark in the year 2000. And then it made releases in the United Kingdom. And supposedly it got a release here in the US in 2003. Although there was a redub done 3 years down the road in 2006. So I don't really know who to believe here. Box Office Mojo or Wikipedia, but I'm just going by Box Office Mojo standards. But it is a very intriguing film for a number of different reasons. One is the voice cast for the English dub, because you have some prolific names in here. Alan Rickman, of course, who plays the bad guy here, a good bad guy too. It's a very different Alan Rickman performance in terms of what we're used to hearing from him. You also got Terry Jones, John Payne, and a young man by the name of Aaron Paul, who plays the role of Chuck in the movie. What would you call him? The obese kid, pretty much. And yeah, that's a young Aaron Paul before he eventually went on to become famous with Breaking Bad. It's funny because he actually was cast in the role in 1998, so this is a really, really young Aaron Paul. This was around the time when he was also on The Price is Right, too. Like, he made it all the way to the bonus round. I think he actually won the Showcase Showdown, too, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I've seen that episode, but you can find that one online. But from an animation perspective, this is some really good-looking animation overall, but it's the story that's just really all over the place. Like, it feels like a little bit of a mix between, The Incredible Mr. Limpid, which they've been trying to remake that movie for a number of years, and you know what? Every time they try to make a new version of it, every time the test animation comes out, it just looks horrible. Like, there's one where Jim Carrey has the face of the character from that movie that Don Knotts played, and it's just, the CG perfection there will very rarely, I don't think we'll ever see a remake of that movie, which we shouldn't. I mean, that's a film that worked for the time period. You had the animation of Chuck Jones, and that's something that you should just stay away from to try to do that for a new generation, unless you have the best visual effects animation that you can find. But it's like, this movie's kind of like a mix between that and 80s Don Bluth. And the most notable thing about this particular movie is what I'm about to show you here. It's the scene where the villain of the movie, played by Alan Rickman, dies. And like I said before, it's the way that this is done. So basically what happens is that the bad guy sees this antidote and decides to use it on the fish, taking a little bit of a time and giving these fish human abilities. And the plan of the main kid of the movie, Fly, is to basically just have him answer questions. Answer questions about, simple questions like geometry questions or math questions and all that. And when the fish doesn't realize it, he keeps drinking it until he turns into a human. And just look at this scene, and I just want you to observe how insane this death scene is.
6,561 is? Yeah, but do you know what happens when object travels at the speed of light?
It turns into pure energy.
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
Depends on the relative of molecules in the universe.
What happens to a fish if he drinks too much antidote?
It becomes human.
Can a human breathe underwater?
Of course not.
I mean, my God, that is... I mean, keep in mind, this was released in the year 2000. Movies were trying to get away from the 80s style Don Bluth films that were classics, you know, Secret of Nim, An American Tail, Land Before Time, that weren't afraid to go dark when they needed to. And I'll give them credit. I like that they went that route, because holy crap, that was dark as hell. Like, the dude doesn't even die, get a last, like, no, he just realizes that, of course I can't breathe underwater, and then just, that's it, silence, and then just, he's dead. Like, my God, man, like, I have to give the movie the credit for having the balls to go that dark, because, man, that is, that's really something that they were able to go down that route. And actually, the more I think about it, this movie's kind of a little bit underrated, because it's a gorgeously animated film. It's an idea that's actually got some clever ideas to it, and it's a film that could have easily been an obnoxious mess, but when it does stuff like that and actually goes to the insane levels that it does, it makes it worth it in the long run to stick around for it. And I gotta give it credit for going down the route it does, because holy crap, man, it can get dark in an instant, but it's kind of an underrated little gem that you can easily find it online. I'd highly recommend checking it out and seeing it for yourself, because it is something you kind of have to see to believe. It's that insane, it's that crazy, and it's that kind of fun too. It's one of those films that it will make you think back to the days of old 80s G, where you could pretty much do whatever you want to, instead of today where the G rating has just become obsolete. But no, this feels like a film that was plopped out of the 1980s and brought to the year 2000. That's how intense some of this movie gets at times, and it's just like, it's a surprisingly fun little film, man. I gotta give it a lot of credit for going down that dark route when it needs to, man. But that is Help I'm a Fish, aka A Fish Tale.